very interesting 6 months or so, I bet.
Chuck?
Well, I don't know if this is the prelude to a full-blown summit meeting, but Chris is right in calling our attention to the coming deal that's about to be done over Syria. And certainly if you, President Trump, are preparing to maybe concede Iran some influence in Syria, a way to prepare the ground for that domestically would be to pound the table and threaten them. I have to say, I mean, I sure hope it was an empty threat, because I don't know that a war with Iran, or that attempt, that responding to something that can be called a threat with the kind of response the president outlined there, is necessarily a threat we're going to want to have to follow up on.
Here again, Secretary Pompeo from that Ronald Reagan speech.
I have a message for the people of Iran. The United States hears you. The United States supports you. The United States is with you. For 40 years, the Iranian people have heard from their leaders that America is the great Satan. We do not believe they're interested in hearing the fake news any longer.
You know, Britt, this is something the Obama administration obviously didn't do, because they were so intent on getting that deal as a legacy deal.
Exactly. Right.
But this administration is reaching out.
I don't think there's, we're almost back to where Iran is concerned, the freedom agenda of George W. Bush. This is saying we're standing with you, and the subtext is, please overthrow the government. We're with you, and I think that's where we are. I think, as I said before, I think, you know, as bombastic as the president's tweet was, it's far less important a thing to watch than what Pompeo had to say.
And when you hear Senator Jeff Flake say foreign policy by tweet is not the right thing to do, what do you think?
I think that what Donald Trump does is he has an impact on people. And when you think about how Obama, just as you mentioned, President Obama, you know, tried to influence Dance with the Devil in Iran, just did anything to make sure that he could get that deal done. I think that this president, by being more direct, is he's getting a response that other presidents haven't.
Finally, Chuck, this interview with Daniel Ortega.
Well, Daniel Ortega has shown the distance he's traveled since the mid-late 1980s. When I was covering Nicaragua as a foreign correspondent down there, it's pretty amazing to think of this ultra-leftist then now coming on Fox News and attempting to influence President Donald Trump's view of him.
But do you think he was trying to influence?
I don't know actually what he was trying to do, because his message was so muddled and confusing. I just want to clarify for people who are watching what is actually going on in Nicaragua, which is that there was a peaceful protest movement that he and the paramilitary groups that respond to his political party went out and crushed with a great deal of violence, and led to this massacre that's gone on in Nicaragua, very much like, as they say, the same thing as Anastasio Somoza in the 70s. It would be wonderful to sit around and reflect on the irony if it weren't such a potential catastrophe, which may have implications for us as well.
We've been following it a lot here. But, Chris, it was a little surreal to hear him say, I don't have anything to do with any of those.
I don't know exactly. The gambling here. Look, I would just say every American who hears that and watches what's going on in Nicaragua should remember this is why we have to get our politics right, because what's going on there is mob versus mob, violence versus violence, violence in the streets. This is why we have to preserve our institutions. This is why we have to preserve civil discourse and respect for each other, because the road gets short quicker.
Going to get in the way of this game of fetch. Don't you love this? Watch this. 2-year-old Conway Nelson caught in the back and forth with his neighbor's dog, Dozer. Keeps on throwing it over, and the dog retrieves the ball, drops it back in the Nelson's backyard, and he's really into it. This new friendship has more than 12 million views so far on YouTube. That's pretty cool. I could watch that all day. Tomorrow, Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen will be here on set for an exclusive interview. We have a lot of questions for her. Thanks for inviting us into your home tonight. That's it for this special report. Fair, balanced, and unafraid. The story, hosted by Martha McCallum, starts right now. Martha, do you see that video?
I love that video.
I love that video.
You might see it again in this hour. I love it so much. Thank you, Brett. Good to see you tonight. All right, breaking tonight, an exclusive interview with the man urging the president to strip top secret security clearances from former officials who are now some of his largest, loudest critics on TV.
I used the term that this is nothing short of treasonous.
I really question his fitness to be in this office.
I know we're not Nazi Germany, all right, but there is a commonality there.
The policies that this president has pursued globally have served Vladimir Putin's interests.
Lies constantly. That person's not fit to be president of the United States.
So you see the trend there. So in all, 6 officials who once held high-ranking posts at the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, and the State Department, a privilege that the president says they have chosen to exploit.
They've politicized and in some cases monetized their public service and security clearances. Making baseless accusations of improper contact with Russia or being influenced by Russia against the president is extremely inappropriate. And the fact that people with security clearances are making these baseless charges provides inappropriate legitimacy to accusations with zero evidence.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Martha McCallum in New York. This story begins with Senator Rand Paul, fresh off his meeting with the president discussing this idea. I spoke to him moments ago. Senator, good to see you tonight. Thank you for being here. Tell me about your conversation with the president about this.
Well, you know, I told the president in private what I've been saying in public, that I think there's a great danger to having talking heads on TV who are ex-CIA agents and still have classified clearance. There's a real danger that they might inadvertently reveal classified information. And, you know, John Brennan's got a history of this. Back in 2012, when we were discussing, you know, we discovered the underwear bomber, John Brennan at that time briefed ex-CIA agents who were retired but still had top secret clearance. He briefed them and said, oh, don't worry, the U.S. has someone inside. We have inside control. Well, then one of these ex-CIA agents went on television and said, oh, yeah, we have a double agent and nobody needs to worry. And it's like, whoops, the double agent was still there. So John Brennan's already been involved when he was on the inside, leaking information to people who still had top secret clearance, who were now talking heads. John Brennan leaked information that almost cost the life of a double agent. This is 4 years ago now. He should have been fired for that, but he wasn't fired by President Obama because I think he was a partisan. But now he's a talking head on the outside saying that basically President Trump should be executed. That's what we do for treason. And so, yeah, I'm very concerned about him having privileges because of his past history, but I would make it more universal. I don't think that ex-CIA agents of any stripe who are now talking heads should continue to get classified information. I think it's wrong.
So I guess that's, you know, the main difference in what you're saying. So you're suggesting that this should be a blanket treatment for all. So, you know, some people are pointing to, for example, Mike Flynn, who had security clearance and, you know, chanted "lock her up" during the campaign. So you're talking about a blanket. Is that what the president is talking about here? Because his critics are saying that what he wants to do is create an enemies list and that he wants to shut these people up. Here's Senator Hirano. Let me just show you what she tweeted out. She said, "This is what totalitarianism looks like." So why is she not wrong?
I think that's a little bit overwrought. No one's talking about limiting anyone's speech. So an ex-CIA agent can get out there and say incredibly stupid things like the president is treasonous. Yes, no one's going to stop John Brennan from saying that. No one stops him from taking millions of dollars to say such horrendous things. But should he still get classified information? I mean, I would think that, you know, if you're a soldier or you're the head of the CIA, basically you have allegiance to the commander-in-chief. The commander-in-chief makes decisions. If you don't like them, you can resign, but he's no longer in government. He should not be getting classified information. He also has a history of leaking classified information that endangered agents in the field and almost got an agent killed.
All right, so you're referring to John Brennan, and that's what you referred to originally, but you saw the White House today. They added a lot of people to that list: Susan Rice, Michael Hayden, McCabe, Comey, and according to what they're saying now, James Comey and Andrew McCabe do not even have classified clearance. They do not have that kind of security clearance. So would you expand the list to include Michael Hayden? James Clapper, would he be on your list as well?
Yeah, I would not probably even name names. I would probably have it as a universal policy that when you leave, the only time I can think of a reason why you would want to keep this would be in a transition when you're still briefing people and you're sitting down with the next administration. I would probably just go one step beyond and not let any retired officials go on television that still have classified security clearance.
So how serious is the president about pursuing this? Because they said, they want to look into the avenues that exist to pull these clearances. What was your impression when you were in there with him about what the time frame is for making this happen and how determined he is to do it?
I think there's a great deal of resolve because I don't think we should reveal secrets to people who are calling the commander-in-chief treasonous. I don't think there's many people in America who are going to disagree with that judgment, that we would continue to give secrets to a person calling the president treasonous. So I do think that the American people are going to agree with him on this. And I would probably just go even further and say that really ex-CIA agents, once retired, should no longer have top secret clearance.
All right. In terms of, did the president, just in terms of the chicken and egg on this, was it your idea initially, or did you talk to the president about it? And, did you say, I'm going to, I'd like to bring this up, I'm going to start pursuing this?
I've been upset about John Brennan's remarks for a long time, but, I've also been upset for him from the very beginning. I filibustered originally his nomination back in 2012, 2013, so I've never been a big John Brennan fan. You remember also that John Brennan was involved with hacking into the Democrats' computers when they were doing the research into torture and waterboarding. They illegally, and he eventually apologized, not before sort of lying at first and saying that they didn't do it. But John Brennan has a very, very sketchy history of doing things and abusing power, so he needs to not be getting any information because I think he has a history of doing things for partisan reasons and also things that the CIA is not supposed to do, which is spy on senators and on their computers.
What did the president say about Brennan?
I think he's not real happy with Brennan and the others for basically, does anybody remember 5 or 10 years ago when people retired from the CIA, they might go on television, but they sort of act like statesmen. They acted like retired statesmen and they would weigh in on affairs from 60,000 feet. But you didn't have them saying, rah, 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 vote Democrat. You didn't have them calling the president words like disgusting and disgraceful.
No, absolutely not.
And so this is so over the top that something's got to be done, and these people do not need to be privy to secrets because they might be using these secrets for